Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning, I'm Jim DeFede, and welcome to Facing South Florida. Feels good to be back at our regular time, 11:30 a.m. Now, we have a packed show today. We'll introduce you to Matt Hagman, one of at least 8 Democrats running to replace the retiring Republican Congresswoman, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. And in a few minutes, we'll explore the possibility that Donna Shalala will jump into that race. But before we get going, this week, President Trump announced his proposal for a deal on Dreamers. It is a proposal sure to anger both the left and the right. My colleague Rick Folbaum provides the broader strokes of the plan and initial reaction.
A path to citizenship for 1.8 million illegal immigrants, many of whom fall into the dreamer category, those brought to the U.S. as children. The White House counting the 700,000 who are registered and hundreds of thousands others who are not. In return, the president wants $30 billion for border security, $25 billion of it for a wall. He also wants to scale back the visa lottery system and end extended family-based migration.
I think it's a serious proposal.
Mario Diaz-Balart, one of the lawmakers leading efforts to work out a deal.
This is the most generous proposal for the Dreamers that any administration has put forward.
His fellow Republican Carlos Curbelo tweeting his approval, saying the plan shows the president fully embraces securing a future in America for the Dreamers. Ileana Ros-Lehtinen tweeted, "Show us the bill and let's have a vote now." But South Florida Democrats are not impressed. Debbie Wasserman Schultz calls the plan a cruel, bigoted ransom note, while Frederica Wilson says the president wants to hold the Dreamers hostage. The idea of providing a path to citizenship is a concession for the president and will be a tough pill to swallow for conservatives who believe it rewards lawbreakers. The conservative site Breitbart already calling the president Amnesty Don.
Mr. President, Breitbart called you Amnesty Don. Is that accurate?
Critics on the left pointing out that the proposal also cuts legal immigration by levels not seen since the 1920s.
So as you can see, this is a long way from being a done deal. Here are some of the potential pitfalls. For Democrats, the cost of the border wall is high. And let's remember, this is being paid for by U.S. taxpayers, not Mexico, as the president promised during the campaign. Also, the changes on family migration are historic. Under this proposal, a new citizen could not sponsor their mother or father, only their spouses and minor children. That would be a bitter pill for many. And as Rick mentioned, for Republicans, 1.8 million people who are undocumented being allowed to stay and would be given a pathway to citizenship, well, that evokes the dirtiest word of them all for them, amnesty. We'll stay on this. Now let's turn to the 2018 midterm elections. There are several House seats in play, but perhaps none is attracting more attention than the race to replace Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. Take a look at this. There are at least 8 Democrats running to be the nominee, and for reasons that are so many. This is a district that Hillary Clinton won by 16 points. And with the expectation that there is a Democratic wave that could flip the House into the hands of Democrats, the view is whoever wins the primary in August will likely coast to Washington in November. But lurking in the wings is an individual who could flip this race on its side, Donna Shalala. Shalala served from 1993 to 2001 as Health and Human Services Secretary when Bill Clinton was president. And then she moved to South Florida, where she was the president of the University of Miami from 2001 to 2015. In 2008, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by George Bush. So explore this a little bit more. Joining me now is Craig Smith. He was the White House political director for Bill Clinton and is someone who knows Donna Shalala well. Craig, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Jim.
I want to get to the Shalala stuff, but I just want to ask you, as a former political director for the White House, you see the president's proposal on immigration. I just want to get your reaction to it. Is this a negotiating standpoint where he's making both sides a little angry so he comes off good in the middle, or is this a political document?
Right now, it looks like a political document. Now, it does give Congress a place to start. His proposal has something that both sides want desperately and something that both sides hate desperately. Once you run it through the meat grinder of Congress, we'll see what comes out. My sense is it'll be watered down from both extremes, somewhere in the middle, but with the clock running on the Dreamers, they're going to have to do something relatively quickly. And for the first time, the White House has actually laid out a a proposal. Now, having said that, you know, the White House changes its position every 48 hours, so we'll see what the White House proposal is on Monday.
We'll see how he likes being called Amnesty Dom. That probably won't sit too well. All right, let's turn to Donna Shalala. As I said, you're someone who knows her well. You know, the speculation that she's interested in running, I've confirmed that there's a poll in the field that was done. Why do you think, well, let me put it this way. Let's start here. What would Donna Shalala's entry into this race mean? What would you think it would mean?
Well, I think look, she would be a serious candidate right off the bat. She's raised billions of dollars for the University of Miami. She's got connections all across the country. So she would come into the race with a huge amount of name ID, probably more than most of the rest of the candidates. She would be able to
more than maybe even all the candidates combined?
I don't know about that, but okay. She would come in with a significant advantage. She'd be able to raise a huge amount of money, and a lot of the money that candidates raise is to build name ID, which she already starts out with. And she is somebody who will work tirelessly at this. So I think what it would do is all of the candidates in this race would have to look at it and say, okay, this is fundamentally different from the race I've been in for the last several months. How has that change in the dynamic here impacted me? And then they all have to make decisions moving forward.
One of the impacts, I think, of Donna Shalala entry into the race is, and I want your opinion on this, it nationalizes that race in a way that it would not be a national race before. And I mean it in this context. Whoever the Republican candidate is running against it, whether it's Bruno Barrero or Willie Chirino's daughter or whoever the Republicans put in that race, if they are running against any of the 8 candidates currently declared, chances are they're not going to be able to raise a lot of national money. But if Donna Shalala is a Democrat, won't the Republican be able to raise money based on the fact that I'm going against Bill Clinton's Health and Human Services Secretary, Hillary Clinton's best friend, Donna Shalala? The Republican will be on Sean Hannity's radio program, Mark Levin's radio program, and all that national money will flow into that race.
It could be. Now, you have to look at the Republican Party where they sit today. I mean, they're kind of like, if you look at the results of the special elections that have been held over the course of the last year, this is a ship that's taken on a lot of water. They've got only so many life jackets to throw out there. They have a lot of retirements here. So the question is, are they willing to invest millions of dollars to save a seat that functionally should have been a Democratic seat 20 years ago, that Hillary Clinton won by 20 points? Is that where they're going to invest the money when they have so many other vulnerable Republican candidates all across the country? I'm not sure they're going to make a decision. I mean, I think they're actually going to have to look at the Curbelo seat, too. I mean, here's a Democrat there who is for Obamacare, for DACA, you know, believes in global warming. How many millions of dollars are they going to spend to save him?
Why do you think Donna Shalala would want to do something like this? She's 77. She's already accomplished so much. What's your guess as to why she would want to even entertain this?
Okay. I am always perplexed why anybody ever wants to run for office, you know, with all the pains that go with it. But this is a woman who spent her whole life caring deeply about issues that are important. Women, children, health care, education. I mean, she is somebody who gets up every day and has a fire in her belly to go out there and make things better for people and improve people's lives. This is just a continuation of what she spent her whole life doing.
Somebody told me she's angry.
Well, I don't think she's angry. I think she is...
Angry, I mean, at Trump's victory, the way the direction the country is going, that anger.
I think she is concerned, and she feels like, I can do something about this. I can help make the situation better. I think she looks at at President Trump's attempts to unravel environmental protections, unravel worker safety, civil rights legislation, and that is not the country that she grew up in. It's not the country that she wants to live in. And I think she feels like she's in a unique position to do something about it, and she wants to.
It's the end of January. The primary is in August. You know, as you acknowledge, she already has huge name ID. Realistically, just from a political standpoint, when's the latest that she would have to make a decision? And is it fair to the other candidates if she starts playing a little bit of, you know, the Mario Cuomo, you know, maybe I'll run, maybe I won't, you know, on the Hudson, sort of Hamlet on the Hudson?
Well, I don't think she has the luxury. If she's going to do this, she's going to have to decide it relatively quickly.
Quickly meaning like within a few weeks?
Within a few weeks, I would think. I don't think she can equivocate very long. just because of the infrastructure needed to mount a campaign. This election is by and large going to be decided in the primary, which is coming up in August. You're going to have a significant amount of money. You're going to have a team, a staff. You're going to have organization, people out there knocking on doors.
Well, you're going to put the old band back together.
Yeah. Well,
you put the old Clinton band back together.
Well, no, I don't think it's going to be that, because the Clinton band is kind of a misnomer. Millions of people in this country voted for him. Millions of the people in this country voted for her. Donna Shalala is somebody who has political credentials before the Clintons.
She's 77 years old. Is there an argument to be made that it's time for a new guard? Let those, are we going to really send a 77-year-old woman to Congress to join Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Dianne Feinstein and Steny Hoyer? And where is the youth of the Democratic Party?
Well, I think we see that throughout the state and throughout the country. Look, if she wants to get into this race, she'll be a serious candidate. She may be 77 years old, but she's going to get up every morning and campaign like she's 20 years old and 20 points down.
What's your gut tell you?
I don't know. This is one of those things that no one can talk her into this race and no one can talk her out of it. It's going to be her decision, and I can't tell you what it's going to be.
Craig Smith, it's going to be fascinating to sort of see how this goes. Let me ask you this, just within our last minute. There are a lot of candidates in the race. We're going to talk to one of them in a few minutes, Matt Hagman, Mary Barzee Flores, Jose Javier Rodriguez.
We have a great lineup of candidates already in this race.
Do you think that the entry of Donna Shalala would have a domino effect of pushing some of those candidates into maybe jumping into the Corbell race? Nobody right now is challenging Mario Diaz-Balart. Is that, do we have too much of a concentration in one race and not enough being spread around?
Well, I, as a lifelong Democrat, I always hate to see Democrats running against other Democrats, and in a field where we have a lot of really good candidates, to see them bouncing up against each other and having some of them being put in a position to lose, it's not something that I ever like to see happen. But, that's a personal decision each one of these people has to make. Running for office is not, having been there and seen it from the early stages, it's not something for the meek. It's something very personal, and they'll all have to make that decision
If she
themselves.
asks you to help, will you help?
I've known Donna Shalala for 25 years. I'll do whatever she asks me to do.
Craig Smith, thank you very much for your time. All right, up next, we talk to a candidate who is actually in the race. Matt Hagman, when we come back.